Within the essay, we will be discussing the soundtrack of the film Interstellar, which was released in 2014 and was composed by renowned film composer Hans Zimmer. We will discuss how the score was effectively portrayed within the film, and also how Zimmer revolutionized the relationship between music and visuals through a deeper meaning. As the score to this film is full of intricacies on quite a massive scale, we will only be focusing on two main aspects of the score. The first aspect being the main theme for the film, and the second aspect will discuss the way in which Zimmer used BPM, aka beats per minute, to symbolize a ticking clock, and how he related this idea to on-screen events. Firstly, I will be talking about the main theme to the film, more specifically the pipe organ within the theme. In an interview about the film, Zimmer explains how he was not told that the film was of science fiction nature when he was asked to write this piece. He was approached by director Christopher Nolan, who told him very little information, mainly explaining how the piece needed to express the love and relationship between a father and a daughter. Nolan did not even tell him what genre to compose the piece in, and left it up to Zimmer to write from his heart. As Zimmer has a son, he delved deep into himself to write a personal composition about his and his son's relationship. The finished product was shown to the director, who instantly knew it would be the main recurring theme within the film. The score went on to receive global praise, and there are multiple reasons why this happened. One of these reasons was the use of the pipe organ within the score. The pipe organ is used as the centerpiece for the main theme. It captures the main melody throughout most of the track. Zimmer used the instrument as a representation of humanity's achievement within the film, due to the fact that it's the largest man-made musical instrument ever created. Christopher Nolan explains in an interview that the church organ represents humanity pushing the boundaries of creation and exploring unknown ideas. Even though the film isn't religious, the use of the organ symbolizes a sense of believing in something greater than ourselves, as it is an instrument used in churches and has connotations of religion and God. This is why it's a perfect choice for a project such as Interstellar, as a lot of the film is about exploring new ideas and places that we, as a race, do not fully understand. The organ they recorded for this piece has over 3,000 pipes and is located in Temple Church in central London. This church is extremely old, dating back to the late 12th century. The effectiveness of recording in such an old historic place of worship is apparent within the score. The organ recording has a deeply eerie and textural feel to it, as if almost to imitate the age of the building itself. The historic nature of the room recording effectively translates to on-screen visual counterpart as well, as at its heart, Interstellar is a film about family, loss and love. The timbre of the organ gives the viewer such an overwhelming sense of loss, but also a sense of wonder, especially when dealing with themes revolving around the scale of the universe in which the film explores. This theme is constantly recurring in various different parts of the film, each time multiplying in emotional intensity as the viewer becomes increasingly attached to the characters the theme is based around. A lot of the film centers around a bond between a father and a daughter, and how their love can transcend space and time. The fact that the theme is played within small-scale family scenes, and also in colossal third-act space scenes, is extremely unconventional within film soundtracks. Rarely do scenes of such contrasting scale have the same score running throughout, and the versatility that Zimmer has managed to manipulate and create is astounding. The success of this score stems from Zimmer breaking the norms of what role film music is expected to serve, and heavily contrasts to what film music used to be defined within. An example being in the early 1930s, when silent films became mainstream, there was a very specific conventional process for the creation of the score for most films in this time period. The music was always expected to be melodramatic and plot-driven, and the score had to follow the story very closely and hit every key perfectly, without overstepping its boundaries and taking over from the visuals. This quote from Alfred Newman in 1937 emphasizes the importance of the role music played within films in that time period. There is nothing in this world that will make people cry or make them laugh as quickly as music. Nothing can take its place in a movie, but it must go along with the story to heighten it. Music daren't assume it first place, or it is bad for the film. Skipping to modern day, Zimmer has essentially created a score that acts as its own character, its own entity within the film. The fact that he wrote this piece without even knowing the premise of the film, and before the film had even started being written, shows that scoring for film is a constantly evolving idea and is becoming something more than just an addition to the visuals. In this case, it was the starting point for the whole project. Essentially, the creation of the score birthed the creation of the overall film.
Interstellar is set in the near future and is about a journey in space to 3 different planets to see if they are habitable due to the situation on Earth slowly turning into a dust bowl. The beautiful journey through space is coupled with a stunning soundtrack that was created by the renowned Hans Zimmer. I'll be focusing on the ticking clock technique that Hans Zimmer adapted into his music. The movie comes with a number of scenarios that keeps the viewer on edge whilst watching. Christopher Nolan has a great understanding on different techniques that induce different emotions to the audience. A technique that is commonly used in films is the ticking clock technique. It's used to create tension and urgency in movie scenes. An adventure through space and time was a great opportunity for Christopher Nolan to implicate this into his movie. John Truby says in his book, The Anatomy of Story, a time endpoint, also known as a ticking clock, is a technique in which you tell the audience up front that the action must be completed by a specific time. He also says a time endpoint gives you the benefit of intense narrative drive and great speed, although at the expense of texture and subtlety. The ticking clock technique has been used in James Bond films, Die Hard, Fight Club, and many more. John Truby says that although this is a great technique for telling the audience that a task needs to be completed in a given time frame, it also takes the immersion away. Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer were aware of this fact and wanted to use this technique whilst keeping the audience fully immersed in the movie. What made Interstellar's soundtrack so iconic was Hans Zimmer's unique method to adding suspense without making it painfully obvious. His method was to make the tempo of his scores 60 beats per minute and add a ticking noise that would signify a clock. He specifically did this with the two tracks Mountain and Coward in the movie. The main scene that this was used in Interstellar was when they landed on the water planet. The team had a time limit to collect an item from this planet and return safely to their ship because time on this planet went a lot faster than it did on Earth. The scene begins when they arrive and leave the ship. A quote is said to start everything off, "Go, go, go, 7 years per hour here." After this being said, the score begins and the ticking clock can be heard. The score begins at 48 beats per minute as the characters are calm and on track to find the beacon that they are searching for in the movie scene. As the scene progresses and the characters find out the bad news that the mountains in the distance are in fact tsunami waves coming towards them, the music crescendos, the ticking gets faster as the tempo picks up to 60 BPM, and the audience are left feeling the panic that the characters are feeling as they race to get back to the ship before it's too late. This is an incredible use of sound on Hans Zimmer's behalf, making the listener feel on edge by having them subconsciously associate the ticking noise to a clock ticking down, allowing the audience to feel immersed whilst understanding the stakes of the situation and not having it being made so painfully obvious to them. The simple quote and the score proved to be enough.
In conclusion, Zimmer has shown time and time again that writing music for modern-day film is equally as important as its visual counterpart, and acts as its own vessel of emotion, and if done right, it can transcend past the identity of the film and become something much more meaningful to listeners. Thank you for listening.